Music producers, Curtis King, CurtisKingBeats.com, and we are joined by a special guest, TheLetterLBeats. Man, thank you for joining us. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, fam. I appreciate it.
Super dope, man. I want to make sure that we see if we're live first, and make sure that the audience is acknowledging. But let me give them a quick little. Brandon, what's up with you? A quick little introduction into kind of how I became familiar with you, where I first saw you, and then kind of some things like that. But then I also want to make sure that you have an opportunity to, let them know about what it is that you've been doing. What are you up to now? And just kind of how you got your start in this, because you're a very important voice within the community for music producers. And you have an insight that we're going to tap into today that I feel like a lot of people have either not considered or maybe overlooked. But let me talk to the chat and just acknowledge the names first, and then I'll get into that. But Cammy Boy, what's up? Solo Menace, Jax, Eduardo, Serve, Rashawn Olive, J Tempo, Christopher, Teasy the Beast, Notch, oh gosh, Leotis. You crazy. Brother Do Good, Vapor Guy, Chris, David, J Anonymous. So, J Anonymous, yeah. So, I first became familiar with you, I believe, at an iStandard event in which I visited the Atlanta area. And I believe that was my first introduction into just kind of shaking hands with you. I wasn't familiar at that time of your contribution to a show that a lot of producers know about, the Producer Grind. But as I started to do more of my homework, I was like, I know that face. I know that beard for sure. And then I saw that, and I was like, okay, well, yeah, okay. So then I start to listen and really take in the kind of questions you asked, which I always felt like it was different. And maybe it's because, we're all different human beings, but I felt like there was questions that you asked that many times I would find myself like, that's exactly the question that I would ask. And so that being said, I became familiar there. You obviously invited me to your platform and gave me the opportunity to really, have the conversations about the community and the things that we all kind of come in contact with. From there, me and you have even built outside of the internet. And and from there, I mean, you have established, obviously you parted ways with the Producer Grind brand, but you have established yourself as a prominent voice within the community, as a brilliant marketing mind, as someone that speaks from a place of authority, and someone who has a bevy of information that I think that a lot of folks are going to be very excited about digging into today. So the TheLetterLBeats, man, tell the people about yourself, where you're from, and what exactly it is you do in your own words.
Okay, well, first of all, man, thank you, man. I'm very humble, and I appreciate those compliments that you just gave me. I mean, I guess I never thought about it that way. I'm just somebody who really, really, really loves making beats. Just can't escape that. So, man, my name, the TheLetterLBeats, man. People that know me, they call me Lamont. Let's see, a little bit about me, man. I didn't start making beats until I was like 25.
Okay.
36 now. When I was younger, I always wanted to make beats, but I come from an era where you needed like 2 Technics turntables, you needed a sampler. Way more money than anybody was going to give me for, music, which back then, it wasn't even a reality that you can make money from making commercial music. You know what I'm saying?
Very true.
Now, and that's part of the push I'm doing now. Kids can go to school and learn how to make a career out of this, but it wasn't that viable back then. So, I graduated from college. I started doing public relations. It was okay. It didn't really tap into what I was really trying to do. And when you looking back on it now, I know I was looking for music. I just didn't know how to kind of get into the lane.
What do you think that turning point was for you when you established that?
Well, I think, because I started doing social work. I started taking some steps towards getting into the field of education, but just, the internet, right?
Right.
And so as the idea crosses your mind more and more, you're able to do more and more research about, and more people are showing how this process looks. And I was like, all right, well, I got a couple extra dollars from a job.
Right.
I see online. Let me try it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I got, if you walk in any general music education room, there's like this janky Yamaha keyboard. right?
We've seen it. We've all seen it.
I thought I was jamming because, you know what I'm saying? Like, I could do the arpeggio, the one button arpeggio.
Yep. Yep. It's like, oh, y'all can't do that.
And, you know, I went through a couple pieces of equipment. I remember I had what I thought was a sampler. It turned out to just be a 4-channel DJ mixer.
Okay.
I remember, shout out to the homie Hot Hands in Columbus, Ohio, because at this time, that's where I was living. You know, I used to go, he had been making beats for years, and he could do every kind of beat you could think of, right? And I would play the beats, and he would be like, you know, hey, you only using stock sounds, right? And I was like, what are stock sounds?
Oh, man.
He explained this concept to me, and my mind is blown for the first time.
Yep, you're never the same when you realize that there is a difference. When somebody first acknowledges to you that, you know, there's like another world out here of sounds. You're like, wait a minute, I don't have to stay with these. And you start, because you know, in the beginning when you're making beats and you're listening to the stock sounds, you're like, man, how in the hell did Pharrell do this with this? Like, oh, it's because they got tens and thousands of dollars worth of equipment. Like most of us will say that, but it's like these narratives that we have in our head that are very similar to when you're a kid and you're playing video games. You say, man, the computer be cheating. Computer be cheating. You know what I mean? It's that same mentality. Like, but the person, God bless the person that opens up your mind and your eyes to the fact that there are sounds out there that are far beyond the capabilities of those poor stock sounds.
10 years ago, and I still shot my boy out, and that's why.
As you should, man. That's huge. That's huge. That man deserves all the trophies in the world. So it's like you're gonna always remember him for that.
And shout out to him. I think he got like a Kevin Gates placement. I think he got a couple like MTV commercial placements. Hot Hands. Or I can't remember. I'll look it up and put it out there when we edit the content. But
right.
Yeah, man. So, I remember after that, I grabbed an MPC 2000, right? And with that, I didn't land on that, but that taught me how to loop. That taught me how to make really good 4, 8, 16 bar loops.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But
right.
Did you ever use one?
I did for about a week. And then I was gonna say, I think I hear a little feedback coming on my side on your end.
You good?
You good. You good now. Yeah. No, actually, no. We still hearing the feedback. Did you have some headphones or something you can grab?
Yeah, hold on real quick. Yeah.
Okay.
How we doing?
Oh, let me see. Testing. We're all good. I think. Yeah, we're good. We're good. It'll drive me crazy, man. It's like when I'm on the phone and somebody on speakerphone. If I hear myself, I don't know what to do with my hands. Like who's the dude from what's the name of that race car movie? He's like, I don't know what to do with my hands. Ricky Bobby. Yeah, I become Ricky Bobby. I'm like, I don't know what to do with my hands. I hear myself. But no, so you were talking about he has placements, and you were talking about that you were getting ready to transition from that story, I believe.
Yeah. So I used the check.
Yeah, for some reason we're getting some static going on. Hello?
Check.
Yeah, you're good. You're good now. You're good. I don't know if that's because of the cell phone.
I had just turned it off because now the people on my live can't hear it, so I was just like,
okay, no worries.
So I had the MPC 2000 XL, and it was dope and showing me how to make loops. You know, I really wanted to sample and things like that. And then somebody introduced me to Reason. And one of the reasons that made sense to me was because you could see the whole sequence. And that was like just much better for me as a composer, just being able to see everything at once. And from then, I just became a student of the craft. I would say around 2015, I started getting really, really serious about trying to cross over into the music business. And that's when I connected with the University of Illinois because they had classes. And what I did, I was a teacher.
Right.
They allowed me to have student teachers. And once you be a student teacher, you know, you get credits to take free classes at the university. And so that's where I met the homie Adam Cruz, who it was just like, oh, I didn't know in this small town at the school, there was somebody who was teaching about dogs. So I get into his class and they got a little program where you can do 3 summers there. I have a master's in education and I kind of got that while I was learning how to make beats.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I was living in Chicago and pursuing it with the first artist I ever worked with, Young General. That was the first time I had run into I Standard and all them when they were coming to Chicago and stuff. So when I met Adam, and I got into his class. They got this 3-year program where you can get your master's in general music education. And what you do is you take your classes like at night in like early morning, but then the rest of the time you're a counselor for this camp, right?
Okay.
It's like band camp essentially. And so when I get into the class, I learned a lot, right?
Right.
I never, you know, if you ever learn in college, it forces you to explore your craft in a way that, you know, it's just, learning is just about creating these contexts where you can apply the skills, right?
Absolutely.
Well, Adam challenged me to do that. The biggest thing I took away from that summer was learning how to mix, right? And that kind of coincided with when Reason, I think 8 came out, they had the SSL emulation mixer in there.
Right.
And that's the first time I learned how to separate frequencies ever.
Right. What do you think is the biggest? Because you know that's an interesting area when you talk about mixing. A lot of producers have so many questions, and I'm sure that they attack you with the many questions when they finally do meet you. Where do you see first the two-part question? Where do you see the biggest misunderstanding of the art of mixing comes from for most music producers? That's the first part.
So I would say, like, at least when I was beginning, I thought it was about turning things up and down.
Right.
That's it, and that's all I knew. It's a little bit about sound selection once you start to understand how that frequency balance works, right?
Sure.
You talk about low, mid, high, and fitting things in between, and then you understand the stereo space, front to back, up. And I didn't know that. I thought I was just, well, I should turn this up more, and I should turn this down. And the other thing was, I always kept everything completely panned out a lot of the time, and I was doing too much that I didn't know. Just not understanding the stereo space.
Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, that's probably the answer to my question. The second part is, what was a breakthrough moment for you when it came to understanding mixing?
Honestly, Reason had dropped this video. They have this series called Ryan's Quick Fix Tips or something, like Quick Fix Mix Tips or something like that.
Okay.
And finally having an SSL mixer, because Reason had devices where you could, you know, I used to, whenever I would use a filter, it would be like trying to emulate something that 40 was doing on Drake's beats. You know what I mean? And so this is the first time I was able to see, like, oh, to adjust these frequencies will allow there to be room for each instrument to fit in.
Right.
And I remember, I mean, we talking freely. There used to be a company called Dynamic Producer. I think they still operate in Atlanta in some capacity, but they used to have this service. And this should just tell you how long I've been doing this, man. And I want to say this is back in like 2012. They used to have a service you could pay them like $60 a month, and they could help you get into the industry, right? And I remember, like, I had paid them for like 3 months straight, and they weren't telling me. Like, they were telling me somebody would just submit a little form and give me critiques, and would say, "Mix sounds like it's from outer space." Okay, great. How do I fix that?
Yeah, what is that? Is that outer space good, or is that outer space? You know, stereo space. What are we talking about right now?
Yeah, so I just think that the breakthrough moment is definitely like knowing where just understanding the stereo field.
Yeah,
you know, I get what compression does. I get what reverb does. I understand. Like, I look at the space 4-dimensionally.
Right. Well, that's certainly important. What I want to get into now is, you know, you've had the opportunity, and you still continue to have the opportunity to talk to a lot of producers, ranging from producers that are just getting started to producers with plaques on the wall to producers with major talent and major, you know, not to say major talent, I shouldn't say that. Everybody has the talent on every level, but that have like major credentials and whatnot. How did you kind of get, if you don't mind me asking, how did you kind of get involved with producer grind initially? Because as a producer, I mean, that's just not a route that you would necessarily think of as an opportunity to, you know, jump and interview people. Kind of how did you make your transition into that? Because then you become a media personality at that point.
Yeah, that was a weird situation. I mean, I think, you know, when you see all these motivational memes, I'm the type of person that I'll mess around and believe them, right? And so, I read Jay Hatch's book, Jay Hatch from My Standard, you know, and I followed Gary Vee. And there's just a set of principles that started to become common, like, you know, hey, you know, use the skill sets that aren't related to making beats to get closer to the people who are in the industry, if that's what you need to do. And so having the master's degree, having the connection to the university, being able to talk articulately about, you know, the craft. And
Right.
I was doing a lot of video, like behind the camera work, and doing a lot of video editing, and that was getting me in the door at a lot of places. And also too, you know, I you know, I was being a dot connector as well. You know what I mean? I was,
Mm.
hey, I know this person over here. Do you want to collab and do this? And
Right.
you know, just like one time, you know, iStandard, when they do their beat battles, you know, they have prize packages, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you know, I had a relationship with Producer Grind where, you know, I had went to an event and I stayed in contact with the head of the company,
Mm-hmm.
and I would, you know, from time to time, like, hey, throw this video on there. Or, hey, would you like to give these sounds away for free? And I knew
Right.
they sold sounds and merchandise, so I connected iStandard and Producer Grind, and they were Producer Grind was giving merchandise to iStandard for their prize packages. You know,
Mm.
but it was a way to cross brand because they had the
Right.
same, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so Producer Grind being based in Atlanta, I was just doing more and more work for them for hire until, you know, they relaunched their podcast. And, you know, I think the first episode, you know, there's a different person in the company that they wanted to do the interviews and be the co-host. But I think that one thing stood out, you know, producers are an introverted bunch by nature,
Well,
generally.
let me ask you this, because I definitely want this, because I don't. My whole purpose of asking this question is not to dig into the politics or dig into the reasons why you eventually made an exit from there, but really my questions are going to be more so about things that you have noticed with the mentality, especially between producers that are, you know, just I started on FL, like MG the Future said, I'm the guy that started on FL Studio 2 months ago or 2 years ago, as opposed to the person that's been the veteran and been doing this for a while. What have you noticed about the introvert concept? Is that something that you feel applies only to up and coming producers, or do you think that that applies to industry producers as well?
Oh, there's definitely some introverted industry producers. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you know, I don't mean to like overgeneralize, but one thing I do know about, you know, I have friends who are introverts.
Right.
It's kind of, they're the type of people that once they let you in, you're in. You know what I mean? And that's what I
Mm,
find a lot of industry producers are kind of like. It's like they kind of have that defense wall, but if they're cool with you, you know, they'll pick up the phone, they'll hit you up, they'll talk to you. You
right.
know, depends on the type. Yeah.
How were you able to break through that wall for the introvert? Because I'm sure, because I read a book by Larry King, who's obviously one of the most you know, famous for interviewing just anybody you could even think of, from celebrities to you know, politicians to anybody you can think of. And one thing he said is that it is your responsibility as the person that is interviewing or starting the conversation to find ways or even find triggers that kind of open people up. And once you find out what that is, you know, it's not about trying to manipulate them in a bad way to get to that point. But the whole point is that once you find that light, you got to go and pursue that. What are some of the ways that you, as a producer and as a media personality, have been able to dig into those and get more out of those producers that are introverted?
I think being authentic, and right, and
Mm-hmm.
so what's new to me to media and social media is such a niche focus, right? And
Right.
so to have, and I think this is the skill set that I represent, to be able to interview people and know so much about the craft.
Right.
And when people know you care as much as they do,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the common thread between whoever has the Grammy nomination versus the person who's still in the basement trying to make it. You know, it's really caring about the craft at its core.
Right.
And so once they see you care, and you start asking those probing questions, well, how did you do this? Because a lot of times you'll see in these interviews they gloss over stuff, or we're just going to talk about business. I'll ask
Right.
you
Right.
I'll ask you about the thought process behind a particular technique. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
How did you do this? How did you do that? Like, because one thing I learned in taking those classes at U of I and then transitioning to teaching is
Right.
people are looking for things that are specific and then things that are universal across dogs. See what
Okay.
I'm saying? And so that's why I like when you'll see those 1 minute tips. I like when they show MIDI editors because every dog has a MIDI editor. So if I
Mm-hmm.
show you this tip right here, you're going to be able to do it here, right?
Yeah.
Things like automation. things like specific transitions. You know what I mean? Just that kind of stuff where this is what I would have wanted to know back when I was using stock sounds.
Right. Yeah. I think that you have been responsible for opening up a lot of information that maybe a lot of folks would not have been able to open up from these guys, because a lot of them are either very protective, very secretive, or they have you know, an inability to kind of vocalize what it is they do, because it's just their art, right? Like it's asking somebody, how did you paint that picture? They learn things that are not always they're not always, you know, it's not like making a cake. You have ingredients, and if you put this amount, you'll have this kind of cake. You leave it in the oven for this long, it'll be this kind of cake. When you're talking about art forms, you're talking about a beat, you could tell somebody step by step, this is how you make, you know, this particular West Coast beat. And it doesn't always translate to being the same result, even with the same exact sounds. And I always found that to be remarkable. You know, so as you kind of take in, because I always noticed you amongst, and that's no shot to anybody else that was on you know, this on the podcast, but I always noticed the questions that you were asking, and you always look these producers in the eye, and it was almost like you were looking for something yourself. Was there sort of like that I don't want to call it selfish, but that other part of you that was like, I'm actually trying to dig into their brains to kind of understand some things for myself? Because you talk to some of like the most, you know, some of the most successful producers in the industry through that podcast.
Yes, and I got better.
No, he said, no cap. Let it be known. Let it be known. There it is. There it is. Yes, yes. As you should. You're supposed to be doing that. You're literally supposed to be a sponge. No matter who it is that is speaking, there's a sponge of either what not to do or what to do. But I always wanted to ask you that. Is that, you know, were there ever questions that you were asking? And it's such a naive question now that I say it out loud. But were there ever questions that you were asking that you want to know for just yourself and not specifically for the audience?
Most definitely, man.
Okay. Yeah. What were some of the questions that you asked that you were surprised about getting an answer back on? Because I'm sure you got a gem from somebody and you was like, did he really just release that right now?
I think the two things that stand out are, I want to say Cicero on the beat, when he was talking about you know, he basically was an in-house melody factory for 808 Mafia. And he talked about just, you know, they would lock in and just, you know, hours after hours, just loop after loop after loop. And it's weird because everything we talk about, I can correspond it with something that I started to practice, right? Because for a while I was making a lot of kits, right? And, you know, again, applying, you know, and that's what practice is, providing context to, you know, apply the skills, right? Like, yeah, right. I was making a little bit of money off of those, but it gave me a chance to practice a lot. And he's like, yeah, everything we were doing was in D and E. I was like, oh. Oh,
wow.
I was like, oh. And then I went back and listened to a lot of that music. I was like, oh.
Right.
And then, you know, I can't remember one specific producer, but we ran into a lot of guys who were talking about halftime, and they were talking about that shaper box, right?
Okay.
And that's how I started getting into sound design. And so when you combine the idea of, okay, D and E, and I think about how many different ways can I sound design and freak D and E? How many different ways can I play? And I started paying attention to how they were playing, like certain patterns of how they were playing chords, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, you know, there's that. And then I want to say, Done Deal on the track was talking about his transitions.
Right.
And that kind of corresponded with, I had grabbed D-Cat's pack, and I was using a lot of his one-shot, like, vocal stabs.
Okay.
But I was doubling, I was like throwing them in triplet and putting a lot of reverb on them, but I was using them in the same way that Done Deal was talking about out of your transitions. And I would take 4 or 5 different versions of those throughout a track and use them to transition, you know, from like the top of the, you know, from the last like quarter bar to back to the one, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so it was weird because when I remember saying it to Done Deal on the air, he did start talking about it. I could hear the hesitation in his voice, but then it was like, well, you after a while, I'd be surprised because I'm not gonna name his name. There's one producer out there who like is like really weird. He's got big placements and he's like really weird about giving away secrets. And I just look at him like, you're you. Nobody's gonna do that.
Nobody's gonna do. Yeah, but yeah. I,
But
I
so,
I hear you. I hear
yeah,
you.
so
And you.
Dunn,
I'm gonna
go
say
ahead.
that. No, no, you're good. You're good. You're good. No, this is your interview.
So I remember Dunn had a little hesitation in his voice about talking about it, but at the same time, he kind of could see, and like you said, I looked him in the eye. And he
Mm-hmm.
kind of see in my face, like, yes, I'm serious about this technique because I want people to take this and run with it. Because
Mm.
this, when you talk about that line between the art and the science,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You hear somebody do something, this is us parsing that line and showing you, like, yeah, if you start to adopt this technique, the art becomes what you do with it, but there's still
Mm-hmm.
a scientific piece to it.
Right. Right. And you know, you gotta show props to the producers that have, you know, that do interviews and they don't give you, how I put it, the 48 laws approach. Whereas like show people a lot less of your intelligence, and kind of send them on wild goose chases. You see a lot of folks do it, and I don't know if they really realize that it's a principle of the 48 laws, or if it's just something that their OGs teach them, or if it's just something that just kind of comes natural to some people. But I think it's always interesting when you do see the producers that come on there. I've been trying to remember the guy's name, and I actually did a video about him because of an interview he did where he was describing, like, you know, this is the new wave, like the beats, you know, beats are it's the trap. Like, you go on Splice, you go find your loop, and then you put that together, and you invert the chords, and you know, you do this, and you know, you have a producer sing you drums, and you add this, and it felt like, for me being such, and you and I are both in the same kind of category on this, but from an old school mentality of, this is the way you put your art together, this is the significance of uniqueness, it didn't make sense at the time. But I want to ask you, so in the same way that I went through a transition in which this producer went on you guys' podcast, or that podcast you were on, excuse me, the one that you were on. He went on there and he described his process, and a lot of producers were angry. So I was confused. I just want to know why. You know, what are you doing? Like, this is not making beats. I went through a transition where I was like, okay, let's try Splice, because at the time I was going through the whole FL Studio debacle and trying to like regenerate my sounds, get more sounds, and trying to do it for the most cost efficient way. And so I opened up Splice. Splice changed my entire creative process because I understood the significance of it, and I opened myself up to a new way of doing things. I'm curious now for you, what sort of things did you find through these interviews that maybe at first you were kind of like about, but then it kind of opened up your approach? Maybe it's through beat making, maybe it's through the promotion. What would you say is something that falls into that category?
One big thing I would say would be the whole culture of collaboration.
Mm.
You know, I remember we did an event in Dallas, and Sick With It, I was like, hey, we're not going to do this event in Dallas without, you know, inviting Sick With It.
Right.
So I remember, and I'm not going to get into everything, but I remember
sure.
Sick With It hit me back a week later, like after the event. He was like, hey, man, all these guys are hitting me, and they want to do collabs. They're asking me how much I charge for collabs.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like summer of last year, and that's the first time it hit me. Like, you know, I'd been in Atlanta a year and a half by that point. That was the first, and I just started to understand the collab. You combine it with what happens online, but a lot of what happens online with that collab culture is derived from the way the Atlanta beat industry works.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, we don't do that in Dallas. It's like, if I rock with you, we rock with you. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to charge. Right. But what I started to understand here, like, I had to let somebody. Hold on one second.
Okay, no worries.
Sorry about that. We get it.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. Because it's funny, as you're talking about the collab culture being different from different parts of the world, I'm reminded of that clip from the show. What's the name of that show? The Issa Rae show. I'm Insecure, and the clip of the, you know, not to kind of give it away for anybody who's into that series, but there's two producers. One producer who's kind of trying to get his feet wet, another producer who's already a veteran and has, you know, connects. And it kind of like, you made a meme out of it that really went viral amongst the community, because a lot of folks out here were like, I would approach it this way. And then some other people were like, nah, you stupid. You don't approach it this way. Oh, somebody just reminded me. It was Cassius J. That was a producer that exposed me to how they kind of do that. And I'm glad he did because, you know, when I made the video initially, as a lot of people that kind of came from his end, that whether he knows it or not, were very angry at me for that video, because I wasn't making fun. I wasn't, you know, trying to be a jerk. I just didn't understand it. I was like, that's not, to me, that I wasn't brought up in a generation where that was okay, or at least they weren't telling us they were doing that. That's a huge part of it. But, you know, Cassius J, like, I have to even kind of give him credit for me getting this Levi's Justin Timberlake placement, because 98% of the sounds, well, I shouldn't say that, because the melodic stuff, I did all that stuff through contact libraries, but everything drum wise, you know, transition, that came from Splice. So I got to give him props for that. But you were talking about the culture of collaboration, how that shifted from Atlanta to Texas.
Yeah. So Secret is like, yo, so part of the reason you have these events is so people who wouldn't normally get to meet people in the industry, they get the chance.
Sure.
Hi, my name is so-and-so, they exchange numbers, whatever, right? And so the way it kind of works in Atlanta, and sometimes on the internet, and I'm not certain, you know, how it is across the country, but it's a pyramid, right? It's kind of like, if you're in a better position than me, I'll pay you. If I'm in a better position than you, you'll pay me. And the way you determine that is who came to who. If I came to you, I should pay you. If you come to me, you should pay me. It's almost like an unspoken rule, right?
Right.
So part of like what we encourage people to do is like, yeah, you know, Sick With It, get some compensation for coming to the event, but we also encourage people to do is, hit up Sick With It for some collabs. So Sick With It gets to make a little bread off of what, you know, his branding and his name. Some other people get a check. Because to me, there's a practical learning process that happens with the collaboration, right? A lot of times a guy, he might not be as good. He gets a chance to hear what another producer does with his track. He can get the stems back. He can look at the session. He can study that and see, hey, here's how I can do my stuff. You see what I'm saying? You can get your homework remixed in a way that, oh, here's a way I can start to learn. You see what I'm saying?
It leaves you vulnerable. It leaves you vulnerable. It's a vulnerability that it honestly haunts me, because I don't do a lot of collaborations. Like the first collaboration I'm about to do that I haven't done in a long time with anybody is about to be with the homie Epic, right? And even that, like we've been doing business together and chopping it up for years and years now, and still have never done a collaboration together. And not even because of what I feel like he would do. That's my homie. Like I trust him. It's my brother. I trust him. But I think that there's even like when I'm putting my beats together, because I know there's going to be an engineer and possibly a producer in the room with the rapper that is buying the beat, I subconsciously change the name of every single one of my instruments. No longer is this a decap snare 4. This is snare. And it may be 4 snares together, right? So this is just snare. This is just snare. That's all you know. You know, even like some of the instruments that have weirder names, like you know, like the gyro, or the like the different instruments that are out there. You know, there's a party that doesn't want to expose that. But you're absolutely right in that we're in a new time, and though it leaves you that vulnerability, it is a necessity. Is that something that you've kind of been taking full force, or was it kind of embedded in you because of where you reside at?
I needed it in the sense that like I had to pay to collab with people who were doing in better positions than me. Right? And so, you know, that was a chance for me to learn. But then also, you know, as my branding increased, as my skills increased, it was a way for me to make money as a full-time musician.
Right.
It was a way for me to practice at my craft at a higher level. You know what I'm saying? It was a way for me to collab with other producers, you know, and that's the other thing too. It's Johnny Appleseed, you know what I mean? Because you know, the homie popped up 3 weeks ago. Yeah, we got a good chance of this Nike placement. Oh, word. Oh, I got a call last week. We got a good chance of this PBS placement. Oh, word. Like,
right.
That stuff starts to come to fruition. You kind of just do it and forget about it, and then people branch out and network, and so it kind of spreads your network out and gives you an opportunity to do more. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I want to make sure that I do acknowledge the folks that are still in here within the chat or just joining us right now. Vapor God, you know, he's speaking on some of the topics that we were talking about. He said, I think they're talking about producers. I think they're trying to ask like some technical stuff, but I feel like it's not always as specific as what they're trying, though. Shout out to the Producer Grind podcast. There was something else I wanted to see in here. Cassius J is the producer, and I'm glad that he pulled the curtain on that. Yet it is great when you play the melody loop on the keys as well. Ankman wants to speak to the importance of having a mentor if you really need one. We're definitely going to get to you guys' questions towards the end of this. I have my own questions that I definitely want to, pick the brain of him, of TheLetterLBeats. I want to pick the brain and definitely get to that. But you definitely have hammered over the head the importance of collaboration and what it can do, especially like just Terry right now said, I'm a beginner producer. If you're a beginner producer, the learning curve is ridiculous, because a lot of the stuff that you're kind of like, it's like walking through the dark without a flashlight, looking for little glimmers of light, right? Like it's like looking around and it's like, oh, that might be light over there. Okay, that wasn't light. That was just a reflective object. Okay, and you keep looking around, and then all of a sudden, you touch something or you mess something up, and it's like, yo, that's a lot of light. And then you bring that and you add that to your arsenal. But it's a beautiful process if you look at it that way. So, obviously, like I said, we know that you have picked the brain of all these different producers. What do you think is a quality that up-and-coming producers and even some of these producers that have these placements, what do you think is a quality that they share that is a negative one, or in your opinion a negative one, or one that is holding their career back? Don't have to speak specifically to anybody, but what do you think is one quality that producers share that may be their biggest kryptonite?
Wow, I didn't expect that question.
Yeah, I apologize for my transitions. They can be...
No, that's a good question, man.
Because you already spoke to like the fact that we're introverted. Producers are generally introverted in general, right? And I always saw that as a quality that when you're conducting business and you're trying to network, that's going to be a detriment to what you're trying to do. But are there any other qualities, even if you got to come back to this one, are there any other qualities that come to mind that present an issue for potential growth for music producers?
I would say, honestly, yeah. Okay, so now I've had a chance to think about this. I'll say not having a plan and not having a big picture. I think one thing, you and I are kind of like-minded, where we have I know I operate, you seem to operate this way. I always have a short-term, mid-term, and long-term plan, and I always have the fire, and always have some kind of process and some new lane that I'm jumping in that fits what I'm doing, and I'm still moving forward with it, right? And I say that to say, like, I ran into a producer in a parking lot after an album release party of a Rock Nation artist. This was a couple months ago. And this producer had some major hits back in 15. Okay. And I know the position that I'm in. I'm not, I try to be humble, right? So if somebody was to come to me for a certain service, I'd be like, all right, man, I can help you out. But then if somebody was to come to me asking me something where it's like, you in the position that you're in should not be asking me for that. Why is that? Because if I had done what you had done back in 2015, now I'm not going to sit here and judge anybody, but I would like to think I would have capitalized on that process where back in 2015, I was teaching middle school. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So, yeah, you should be coming to me trying to, you know what I mean? And so I look at that, some of these cats, they ain't got no plan. They just jump into this and, like one of the reasons the sync licensing placement is so important for me is because that's almost like, to me, I know I'm going to get a major placement at some point. I just got to stay in the game. But the sync licensing is like, it's almost automatic. You know what I'm saying? You just got to engage in the process. But that's like insurance. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yo, homie, you should have had your stuff in a video game by now. You should have had you a commercial or a theme song or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of folks sleep on those opportunities, or they just don't even know how to get involved in it. But nevertheless, it's always worth your energy and your time. So obviously the biggest news this week, and the most unfortunate news, and I know folks who've been following me know the impact of this news on me. And just the area that I'm from, you know, being in Southern California, was the untimely passing and shooting of Nipsey Hussle. And, you know, I've been having a troubling time, just like anybody else would, who understood more than just the musician, but the businessman behind, the entrepreneur, the marketing genius, the you know, the intellectual behind the branding that was a Nipsey Hussle. You understand the impact. And you know, I want you to speak, first of all, in terms of what influence maybe that he may have had on you. And then I want to kind of dig into another concept. We talked about it off the camera, but I want to separate the two because I want to honor this brother's life. And I want to make sure that, you know, we focus in on that first, because the stuff I'm about to get into now is about to hurt a lot of producers' feelings, and I don't care. But go ahead, brother.
Nipsey was an incredibly human being that happened to be a really good rapper. You know, you live long enough and you start to understand what it is to do this human experience. You know, if you have any sense, at some point you understand the importance of giving back to your community, right? In some shape, form, or fashion, right? I know how rare it is for somebody to have a consciousness to elevate themselves. You know, we talk about there's different types of artists and people. You know, some people are going to give you that 48 laws of power stance.
Yeah.
And then some people are going to say there's nothing wrong with everybody knowing how to do everything. And the more that I know, the more that I can share. You know what I mean? I really am a person who believes in circle of influence. And I think it's like-minded people across the country that share these philosophies that are really impacted by his loss, because here's just the truth of the matter. I'm aware of his career and, you know, how long he's been in the game. And Victory Lap was amazing. But I'd seen so many of his interviews talking about buying back the hood and not letting people come from the outside in to gentrify your neighborhood, empowering people by setting up businesses where you can employ people from your neighborhood, setting up passive streams of income, investing in cryptocurrency, opening up STEM schools. I knew about these things. I saw his interviews with Gary Vee. And that's the kind of stuff where it's like, when an artist understands that they are a 360-degree entity, the whole purpose of that, I mean, all things should work to the greater good. So the whole purpose of that is that you have multiple entry points into you. It's okay if you saw all the interviews and understood the work he was doing, you didn't really hear the music, because that was the point. You see what I'm saying? Hey, by the way, I'm glad you like what I'm doing in giving back and starting nonprofits. I also have this music too. And then the more money I pick up this music, the more I can go give back.
I'm saying it's one of those systems where I know you and I have both talked about this. We aspire to create these systems, almost these spider webs of influence, where they may know you from the interviews you do with the podcast, and they may know you as a teacher, they may know you as a speaker, they may know you as, oh, that's the dude that I saw at the ice stand. They may know you for whatever they know you for. Same way, they may know me from YouTube, they may know me from producing, they may know me as a rapper. I don't care what it is that you know. Every single one of these things are an extension of the bigger brand. Every single one of these things are another branch on the tree that brings you in. And if you're like, you know what, I don't really like Curtis King the musician, but I like him the teacher, it doesn't matter. You're here. You're here now. And with somebody like that has so far-reaching influence, I mean, please, for somebody, name me somebody that is being mourned by the LAPD, Bloods, Crips, SAs, and any other gang faction that you can think of, Gary Vee, LeBron James, Steph Curry. Like, this is so far-ranging all over. And on top of that, the thing that has surprised me the most is to see the news outlets actually do their job. Like I can, obviously every time something like this happens, it's going to be the controversial headlines where they say gangster rapper, gets killed and shot and killed in front of a store. But there have been a lot of these outlets that I'm definitely have been somebody who's criticized them. They've got it right. And it's like, you want to give them props, but it's like at the same time, it's like, that's your job. It's what you should be doing. But the fact that they talk about, his program that focused around stem cell research, his contribution to creating an African American museum, the stuff that he did within the community in terms of the backpack giveaways, and it was just more than just the stuff that's like the basic stuff. I look at him, and you guys understand how, if you don't know, I'm a huge Pac fan. Like even now, like you see, you got the Rolls Out of the Concrete as a tattoo on my arm. I'm a huge Pac fan, but the truth of the matter is that Pac didn't have the capital to bring to life the ideas that he shared with us, right? He shared with us so many beautiful ideas, and he was a person that opened up his doors to a lot of homeless people to come into his mansion and let them sleep in there and fed them and all that good stuff. But the truth of the matter is Pac planted the seed, and he wasn't able to have the capital of a Nipsey Hussle who owns his masters, right? Of a Nipsey Hussle that had the opportunity to build up not just a clothing store, but to have, a restaurant that was ran by family, to have a barbershop all within the same vicinity, and even have like a all-purpose needs store for deodorant and for pro clubs and just all the necessities that they can all get. And he was employing local artists. Like he is the actualization of Pac's dream. He did it. He had the capital. He sold his album for $100, sold 1,000 copies at $100,000 and launched his label, his independent label with it. It's just like, I don't think people understand it. And I'm speaking with so much passion. I got goosebumps as I'm talking about this, because what I wanted to bring this to is that we are all a music community. And although we cannot control every person's decision, some people are going to be assholes no matter if they are producer, rapper, plumber, car engineer, whatever. But it's so disheartening to see producers who know, they see it on their timeline, how much of an influence a Nipsey Hussle is, and to turn around and turn this man's legacy into a tight beat. At this point in time, the man's not even buried yet. And I'm seeing on my timeline, Nipsey Hussle type beat. I'm even seeing people who use Nipsey Hussle type beat RIP and make that seem like it's a tribute to them. No, you're selling product using this man's name. Yeah. And I think that there has never been established a code, and it's kind of impossible to a certain degree to establish a code on the internet because everybody's invited. But I feel like it's up to us, the TheLetterLBeats, myself, and all these folks that you guys look to as influencers. We need to speak on a code of conduct to handle yourself, because if you can't get this part right, we're just talking about empathy. There's no way you'll be able to handle the responsibility of the fan base you say you want. Mm-hmm. You won't be able to handle it because you don't have empathy. And those without empathy, even with people who have an audience, those without empathy will eventually lose that audience.
Earlier, I had alluded to, when they put out all those motivational memes, I'm a person who actually believes them.
Right.
I remember one that Gary Vee put out. He was like, some people say, I want to make $1 million so I can help people, but you're going to have to help people if you want to make $1 million.
Facts.
That's the legacy that Nipsey kind of left. And so, if you see it that way, it does require a certain amount of empathy. I know that part of the topic you're trying to transition into, one of the reasons that, we're seeing a lack of it is because you have people who, listen, I don't want to diss anybody or judge them or
right.
Put them down because of their privilege. But when you haven't ever struggled, it's hard to sit in that place of understanding what it's like to not have, and understanding, what I mean? Just basic stuff, and those things that Nipsey provided to the community that, the greater society at large had failed. You know what I mean? And so now you got people who hop on the internet and, listen when I remember, I think I was in grad school. It might have even been before that, but some professor said, treat the internet like it's real life, because it is, right? But you have people that just don't they don't think the internet is real life. You know what I mean? And they don't think there are real lives behind these things they see in these pictures. You know, just to, and I want to cap this off, but my girl and I have been mourning this week, like really seriously in mourning. We're two people that are like-minded. We care greatly about, you know, the philosophy of think local, but act, or think global, act local. You know, no matter where I'm at, I'm involved in the community. I'm always working with kids. And us to kind of see what has happened there, it's sad. I'm very sad for his family. I'm very sad for his wife. I'm very sad for his children. I want to say this piece. I interviewed a couple of producers who work with Bankroll Fresh here in Atlanta. Okay. And if you've ever had a chance, I mean, this ties into us as producers. If you've ever had a chance to really build a relationship with an artist, you're going to connect with them in a way that just two other people just don't connect with.
Sure.
I'm sorry for his production team, the folks over at 1500, Rants and those guys who put together this classic piece of work, and they lost a friend, they lost a collaborator. They can't call him up and say, I got this great idea, I want you to come hop on it. You know, and if I feel that way and I've never met the guy, you know, I can't imagine how they feel. You've seen it. He took a picture with everybody.
Yeah. Everybody, that's something that somebody brought a great point about, is that you notice when you get certain celebrities that pass away, if they weren't a person of the people, people are taking Google images that everybody has access to when you're seeing the same pictures over and over again. With Nipsey, not only are you seeing Google images because some people maybe didn't have an opportunity to meet him, but you're also seeing people who all have a personal tidbit, personal story about their interaction. And it's like they have no incentive to because I even see people who criticize that, like, you shouldn't be putting up a picture of you and Nipsey, like it's not about the likes, it's about, but it's like everybody mourns differently. Everybody mourns differently. That's one. I never try to pass judgment on how somebody mourns. I even see the people who are like, oh, you know, I've never seen this person listening to Nipsey Hussle and da-da-da-da. And it's like, you know, it's not about your standards of mourning. It's not about that at this point in time. What it's about is making sure everybody is respectable and everybody understands that it's bigger than any of our arguments. Right? When you start talking about, you know, his kids. When you start talking about, you know, his lady, like you're talking about his immediate family, his brothers, his you know, his mom, and all these people that we don't see in the light. Said the same thing about Mac Miller, right? So when Mac Miller passed, people are only thinking about, oh man, he made my favorite song when I was graduating high school, and he took me through this time. That's cool. I feel you. Mourn that. But don't forget that there's a mom who doesn't know him by any of these industry, you know, monikers or by his music. Like she wiped his butt. Like that is her baby. No matter how old he is, that is her baby she lost. And so that's a part of empathy that I feel sometimes gets lost, you know, specifically online within there.
Tell that story too, man. I want to make sure you tell this, because you have to, you know, to me, the first thing you have to do when you're rebuilding one of these broken communities, you talk about the concept of what they call the broken windows theory, right? Which obviously there's a lot of sides to that, but you know, in where the plaza in front of the shop was, there's a guy who was assigned to clean up the neighborhood. They were replacing the light fixtures and fixing all the street lights. Right. And the guy had been going home and telling his wife, like, hey, man, every day the crew and I would go out there. There's always a shop owner who brings us snacks and water and things like that. Right. And, you know, come to find out after he passes, the wife says, yeah, I didn't know that guy was Nipsey Hussle. He was just the guy who cared so much about his community and was so appreciative of what we're doing. I get the impression that he was a white guy, but, you know, here's a guy, Nipsey, that has that foresight that says, these guys are helping my neighborhood. You know what I mean? Right. That's just the person he was. Like, how do you, like, that's the person we lost. You see what I'm saying? Who's that nice? Who's that caring? Who's that empathetic? You know what I mean?
and it happens to be, you know, of gang affiliation too. Like you know, like you just don't see that all encompassed. People don't understand, like you don't see that level of, and that's not to say like gang members are
the most dangerous gangs in the history of gangs.
One of the most dangerous gangs, especially out here on the West Coast. I mean, it's to the point where I'm one of the biggest Seattle Mariners, you know, King Griffey Jr. era fans, right? I cannot wear that hat going around unless I know somebody from that neighborhood. You will be pressed in parts of LA just for having the hat on. I remember I had the jersey on because that just happens to be that's something a lot of Rolling 60s would wear was the jerseys, right? Even just thinking about like Russell Westbrook. He went and dropped 20 points, 21 assists, 21 rebounds. Why? To symbolize the fact that Rolling 60s was the gang that Nipsey represented. He was the face of. And because of that, he went and dropped these numbers. But that is showing you the influence, and only people who really, man, who really understand, you know, and I don't want to make it just an area thing, are the people who understand the culture out here. And to understand this culture, you can tell the people like for one, the fact that you understand your own your own culture out there, and you understand like how these things work and how rare it is to see figures like this. It makes you really appreciate like the masterpiece. It really makes you appreciate the folks that have found a way to get into their 40s and do this, because this, I just keep saying to myself, like, and I know it's so cliche, but like it ain't fair. Like, that shit is not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. Especially because of what he was doing. Like, I've never seen the LAPD, like the chief, like he's getting ready to cry as he's talking about this, because he's like, here is an example of someone that was doing it right. I don't want to hear any of the conspiracy theories. This is the first time that I don't even want to entertain the conspiracy theories, because I feel like what it does is it makes people get in a place where they need to be right instead of be empathetic. Right? No, it's this, because of this and because of this documentary. I hear you. Right? I'm not saying that there's not evidence that points in that. It doesn't matter. The bigger thing is that you must feel this empathy for more than just yourself and your theories and being right. I think that's probably a bigger priority. But I wanted to make sure we touched on that, because that's been a subject that has definitely been on my mind, especially as I go through my timeline. And it's not just producers. Like, I don't want to come down on our community like that, but I got to say, there's companies that, I mean, the day the man passed away, there was already a T-shirt where this company that doesn't have a face, I can tell that they're doing some drop shipping. They're already putting up ads for that. I saw the same thing for Prince. So at some point, this is human nature. When 9/11 happened, there was a guy that was selling hot dogs for $40 to people down there who had debris on their face and who had just went through this traumatic experience. This guy was selling $40 hot dogs. Why? Because there was no other place you were going to get food. Everywhere else was closed. So I know to a certain degree that is human nature, but I just think that maybe it's naive to me to ask this, but I want to ask that you try, those of you out there, try that who are having issues with this, try to feel some sort of empathy. Try to imagine, what it would be like to be in that situation. And if you can't, just stay silent for right now. Give it a week. Lord Jesus, give it a week. That's it. Just give it a week. Let folks, express themselves. But that's that. I just feel like I got to chill out. My blood pressure rising. And, the older I get, the more detrimental that becomes. But I don't know. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add to that before we transition to another topic?
I'll say this, because I'm really mourning. Like I'm really. I want to sit in a place of healing, because I want to celebrate
sure
as much as I can, right? So I just think the way as a producer celebrate. Here's what I'll encourage everybody to do. Jake One did 2 behind the beat making videos of. He did one for Loaded Bases with him and CeeLo and Nipsey and CeeLo. He did one for the Bend Down with Nipsey and Swizz Beats. I would encourage everybody to go check that out. It's a great way to just get to know him more if you didn't know his music better. A great way as a producer to celebrate and just feel good about the legacy that he left. That's it.
Well, I definitely appreciate your input on that. I appreciate even this opportunity to have this open dialogue on it, because I feel like it's definitely important, and I just don't see a lot of us speaking on it. And like I said, I'm not trying to pass judgment. Everybody has a different way of mourning, but that needed to be spoken about. Now, let's kind of revisit something that happened before, because you are the reason. I'm getting ready to go to. Right. This conversation, we have to rise from a low fidelity, because Yeah, we're going to have to talk about this lo-fi situation. So, obviously, you guys know from the last interview with Av McCree, I talked about how I made a tweet. The tweet went viral. Basically, I was saying that, lo-fi is diet J Dilla. It's, I was going in. I was like saying it's like Keto, Odyssey, and all these different people who came before it. And because I did this, everybody kind of had their tidbits, what I saw, and I'm not saying that it was for this reason, is that very shortly after, Ninth Wonder jumped into the foray and he expressed his thoughts. Folks came at even crazier at him. And it gave me a lot of perspective because of how empathetic I am for my grandfather's generation, in which I saw he told me about the transition that jazz went through from being about the Count Basies and the Miles Davis and the John Coltrane to then becoming like more Kenny G-ish, more smooth jazz, and even going from being still something with a lot of skill set to becoming something that you rarely see black jazz musicians, even though they were the beginning of this, and this was a escape from them because of the way that society was set up at that point in time. Now you're seeing them sort of be pushed out, and then you start to see the rules of what real jazz is start to be kind of shifted, and in a I could say in a bit of spontaneous energy, I made my tweets. I thought about it and I said, you know what? I'm not going to let this happen. My grandfather used to tell me the same thing that happened to jazz will happen to hip hop. And so I was in my feelings and I decided to express some of those feelings. And in the midst of that, I think that I jumped the gun and I didn't acknowledge the fact that there is a very strong community of lo-fi producers who happen to be black, that happen to be, that look like the OGs and the forefathers of this genre. And there are a lot of, producers that happen to be of other races, whether it's white or whether it's, Asian or whatever it is, that they're allies. They understand the culture. They have a respect for the folks that came before them. And I'm not talking about just me. I'm talking about the people who came before me, because they're the ones that really identify this sound. But it just kind of got to me because I was like, if you're gonna try to tell me that lo-fi, the difference between lo-fi and boom bap is the fact that it's ambient rain sounds in the background, let me introduce you to Premier. Right? Are you gonna tell me that it's softer drums and it's steady music? Have you never heard a nigga beat? Right? Like whatever arguments you can give to me, in my mind, I still process this as no, that's it. That's boom bap. However, I jumped the gun, and this brother right here, TheLetterLBeats, text me, and he was like, before you go too far in, because you see me going in, he was like, let me kind of bring something to your attention. And what was the name of the producer that you put me on to?
Stolen Drums.
Stolen Drums. And I tell you, when I listened to, I was like, I still had a bit of a skeptical ear because I'm like, I don't like them taking the boom bap. But then I listened to Stolen Drums, and Stolen Drums sent me into a rabbit hole of like his Veggie Tacos projects, and I started kind of digging into, other producers that kind of were similar to him, or what Spotify signifies as that. And I approached today very apologetic. Not because of my intentions. My intentions were pure, but I got to say this. I jumped the gun on it because I realized that I was starting to get into a space where I was becoming the old head voice. And I didn't realize I was the old head voice. I didn't mean to get that to you while you was drinking that water. But I started feeling myself getting into the old head space. And I think that's the energy that's being pushed towards Ninth Wonder right now, is that they're giving him an old man space and they're going at him as such. But a lot of folks were more so surprised that I would approach things like that because I am so welcoming to different sides and empathetic to different sides. So I've said it before and I'm going to make a formal video about it, but I have to be apologetic to it because, TheLetterLBeats, you exposed me to Stolen Drums, and even a scene out there that in Atlanta that embraces, this revival of the sound. What is your views on the genre? And then what have you seen from your perspective with lo-fi?
Yeah, so there's another side of the trap coin out here in Atlanta, man. And it's definitely like real hip hop, and there's like a legitimate lo-fi scene, right? And so the homie Stolen Drums, I had a chance to interview him while I was still with the podcast. I also did some content at his secret Fat Cave. You would love it, man. It's like every drum machine you could think of.
Oh, man.
Thousands of records. Like he's got live drums. It's like his setup is like the perfect mishmash. Like the perfect mishmash of analog and digital that I've ever seen in the way he uses it.
Okay.
And not just audio, but visual too. Out here in Atlanta, like Controllerize is one of the cliques, Live Hip Hop Daily, the homie Mike Sick, where, and these are the same people that, honestly, a lot of people don't know this. There's a connection of network of people that are the same people that basically put on AC3 out here. Right? I'm sorry, out here. And so they're kind of the other side where they're keeping real hip hop alive. And part of that is the lo-fi scene. And so, you know, if you're going to dig into lo-fi, like, yeah, I know about the study playlists and I know about lo-fi chill and hip hop, but a big part of it is the performance element where there are people making this music live. A lot, you know, the culture that surrounds a dog, right? There's a big lo-fi culture around Ableton because you can use the push and perform live and things like that. So to me, yeah, no, I just think it's a cool scene. I think like anything, if you keep your mind open, it's not just limited to like, you know, that one picture of that girl studying that looks like the chick from Scooby-Doo or whatever.
Right.
You know, it's not just that, bro.
Yeah.
This when somebody says lo-fi, I envision that little SP 808 sampler. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And like kind of I'm teaching. So the final project from the class, and I'm teaching at the University of Illinois, which we haven't even talked about. We got to talk about that for a second.
Yeah, they definitely want to end on that note for sure.
Yeah. The final project, you pick a genre, and then you make the beat, and you do a tutorial in your DAW about how you make that beat and what things go into making that type of beat. We actually had a type beat discussion, and unbeknownst to me, it erupted in our comments section. But everybody wants to do a lo-fi beat, and I guess it's really popular amongst the college kids. And so I had to put a lot of them up on stolen drums because, remember, the things that are universal, transitions have been a common denominator across all our projects, right? So for a lo-fi beat in your proposal, you had to explain to me specifically how you're going to do your transitions, right? I don't know about transitions for lo-fi. Go see the homie Stolen Drums. Every stutter effect, every pitch down, every reverse, which that we might use in trap, but are really specific and necessary in doing those lo-fi transitions.
Yeah, hey, definitely go check out Stolen Drums. I see a few people in here that already know about Stolen Drums. Please go check him out because he is definitely sort of a catalyst to why I'm going the direction I'm going now, because I really want to. I want to understand first. That's my process usually. My thinking process is I question, and the questioning is helping me to gain understanding. When I gain understanding, then I want a little bit more clarity into the why this is being pushed. And then as I start to see it, I try to look at what I call the snow globe view, which is to pull out a snow globe, you know, in your mind and see the bigger picture beyond what your own biases are. And I think that now that I look at it, I'm like, okay, I see it. It's this kind of energy of me calling it lo-fi Dilla or dairy-free black milk. It's that kind of energy. It's that kind of energy that makes it go back to being dormant again, right? Or makes either goes dormant or becomes bigger, and the same result happens that happened before. So it has to be it has to be met with a different energy. So now I'm looking at it and I'm getting myself familiar with you know, the Shilohs, and I'm getting familiar with the Stolen Drums and different folks within it, and really understanding what it is, and then seeing it for the good that it is.
You know MSX Sound too, right?
I've seen the name a few times. I know I definitely went over when I was going on my tour of sounds. I'm pretty sure I went across a few of his joints.
But I think him and Sound Oracle were collaborating, and they do the fully iOS thing. He has the Fly Tape iOS app. It's like a BST. Like it emulates a lot of those lo-fi techniques. So I know a lot of people are getting into it.
Okay, yeah, that's. And I think Ankh Man brings up a real good point. Now I'm trying to figure out the performance aspect on FL with the Kai Fire. A lot of folks are seeing a necessity, you know, even with the machine and all these different pieces of hardware. They're seeing a necessity for it. It's almost like a nostalgic factor that comes in many different forms, right? It can come from the fact that people go back to CDs or they want to have cassette tapes. I'm seeing I saw a cassette tape player being sold in Walmart the other day, and I'm like, that's crazy, but it's not so crazy because, you know, these things come in cycles. So that being said, you know, I'm trying. I know there's a lot of folks that are like more so my generation that are like, Curtis, man, you're getting weak on them. And it's like, no, we need to not be the alienators of this. We just need to make sure that two things happen. One, we embrace and we understand and we create that olive branch so that those who are coming into this can say, you respect me and you like what I'm doing. Now I want to ask you a question about, no, I'm saying, last point I was going to say, now they'll come to us and say, how can I get this sound to be even more unique? Or how can I get this to be like more like the Jay Dillas? We studied these dudes, right? We studied all of these folks. Now we can be a source of energy for you. And then also the second thing I wanted to say, last thing before you get to that point, is that now there is a lane for producers who maybe they were known as boom bap producers. Now you have a lane that is going to be profitable, and you have tools like TrackLib that allow you to sample and clear your samples and get them up on these streaming websites. So yeah, no, there's no excuses anymore. So I'm sorry, go ahead. I cut your point off, but
No, I was just gonna ask you a question. So right now, today, and what time is it?
12:17 over here. I
told the person I'm doing the podcast. I told my girl I said I'm doing the podcast. No response. Okay, I see that you're doing the podcast. Okay. What right now today? It's what, 12 o'clock, 12:17.
12:17 today. Yeah.
12:17 today. What is right now? What is your working definition of lo-fi?
At 12:17, I have to look at, if I'm going to approach the definition of lo-fi, in my opinion, it has to be less about the sound and more about what it stands for. Okay, the way I look at it now, in order to like really understand, it's almost like when I tried to understand what Kid Cudi was when he first came out. I was like, he's not a rapper's rapper, but he's not a singer. But he's this alternative that's so dope, and I love his music. So I have to appreciate him for what he is. He just is that. So when I look at lo-fi, I think about it and I say, it is, from a creative standpoint, it is a modern spin and a modern representation of soul. Okay, for the internet age, I should say. Aside from that, marketing wise, I look at it and I say, it is the youth's opportunity to get sounds that apply to people who enjoy music for studying purposes, for meditation purposes, for anxiety, which I know a lot of people in this day and age definitely have their own issues with anxiety. It's a alternative for them to tap into. So that's the way that I'm kind of like having to piece together. That's a great question, but I'm piecing it together in those two lights so that as I get an understanding, I'm not being biased about it. I have to say, whenever I start getting angry about the sound, that means that I'm thinking more so about the marketing. And whenever I get angry about like, who are the faces of this, that's when I get angry about the sound. So I think establishing a separation between the two, that has helped me get the best definition of it. But really, when I look at it, it's just, it's a more ambient approach to boom bap.
Okay, so I'm glad you said that, because I definitely want to talk about some things. Okay, so being the type of person I am, the way I approach everything, first I go for, being an English teacher, we have to teach connotation versus denotation. Right? Okay. What is that dictionary definition versus what do you think of when you just hear it, right? Right. And I had to literally teach my students this semester about it, right? And the reason I had to go back to this was because my students had gotten locked into, this is what lo-fi is, right? And so I said, okay, let's take you back to the 70s. Much like that's been happening the last 15 years with our TV screens, and we're getting higher and higher definition and higher, clear and better, clear visuals. Back in the 70s, they were doing the same thing with sound. And so the concept of high fidelity came out, right? And so then if you have high fidelity, you have to know what low fidelity is, right? And so it's just the concept of like what the quality of the sound is. And so once you start to examine the quality of the sound, you have to look at all the variables that affect the quality of the sound. Okay. The media, as we're going from vinyl to 8-track to tape, right? Not just how you consume it, but how you record it, right? If you're recording on tape, they reuse the tape. Well, once you record something, even if you record a new recording over it, what happened on the tape before affects the new recording.
Degeneration, yeah. Degeneration, yeah.
And so when I started explaining it to her, I had jumped into reason, because one of the things I do in my classes, we do Google Hangout screen share, or we'll
Okay.
do like a Skype screen share, and I'll get into my DAW and show them some things, and we'll get into their DAW, and they'll show me what they're trying to do. And so I pulled out Reason's Audiomatic, right? And I said, hey, one of the things that happens with that tape is the pitch is affected when you reuse it. So what I did was I had to show her. I said, watch me play these piano chords on this regular piano. You see how it sounds normal, sparkly, like a brand new piano?
Right.
And I put the Audiomatic on it and affect the pitch. And she goes, oh, I goes, doesn't that sound like that? She goes, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I throw a little bit crusher on there, and then I do filtering, and her mind is blown. Well, realizing that she's only 19 and she just found out about lo-fi last year.
Yeah, yeah.
She wasn't alive at a time when audio didn't always sound this way.
Yeah. So it's like it's like a cool effect to her. And you know what? I'm glad you brought that perspective up of the listener like that, because I don't know. I'm not sure. Was this like a young female producer, the 19-year-old?
Well, she was a student at the University of Illinois who.
Okay.
So in this class, it's everybody who. I've got a guy who's been making beats for 5 years. He probably will take a more advanced version of the class. I got people who want to be music teachers, and they want to make sure that before they they graduate, they know how to use a DAW so they can use it in their classroom, because that's not being taught everywhere. And then I got people like this young lady who, oh, I just thought it was some cool stuff, and I happen to have GarageBand computer.
See, and what I want to take from that, what I want to kind of take from that, because I want to get into two things to kind of end things out, is one, I want to get into what is your work at the campus that you were at, that you've invited me to do some online speaking, which I'm greatly appreciative of. And then also I want to take some questions from the audience. But that perspective that she has of, I just thought it was cool. I think there's a lot of folks who are not understanding why it's such a big deal. There's a lot of folks, even in my own audience, who may not be they don't consider themselves a part of a culture. They just kind of feel like, I'm just a music listener. I love music, and that's just what it is. And during when I made that tweet, there was a lot of perspectives that were like, it doesn't matter to me who made it or where it was from. I just like what I like. You got to be careful with that energy, because although that may be the truth and you don't mean anything bad by it, it shows a bit of tone deafness to the importance of culture to other people, right? The same way, imagine you're a huge sports fan. You love your New York Yankees, right? And somebody comes to a game with you and they're playing the Boston Red Sox. And then you're like yelling at the Boston Red Sox, and then this person that came with you is basically clapping for both teams, and they're cheering for both teams. And you look at them and you're like, do you not understand this is a rivalry? You can't do that here. You have to understand why, the significance of that. You're asking them to understand the culture of the New York Yankees and of baseball and of rivalries. It's the same thing, the same concept, but it's within music, that if you don't know where this music comes from, it shows a bit of a tone deafness and even an apathy towards the origin of it. It all matters. So I wanted to use that example because I think that does represent a section of my audience that are like, bro, it's relaxing. I like to study. I don't really care about all the other stuff. I feel you. I understand where you're coming from, but don't let that apathy make you apathetic about it being a level of importance to other people. So culture matters to a lot of us, and this is why we're making a big deal about it and having the conversation of it, because it's very easy for that apathetic point of view to become a mainstream point of view, and then people forget where things come from. In the same way that folks have taken burritos and then called them wraps, and then it's like, no, or they take do-rags, wave caps, and then, Gucci or somebody gets a hold of it and they call it the most trendiest style and headwear. And it's like couture headwear. And it's like, no, that is a do-rag. I get that from salads. What are you talking about?
Do you have a time limit? Because there is something I want to talk about.
No, go ahead. No, you're good. You're good.
You just reminded me of something. Okay, so I'm going to call a spade, and I don't walk around elephants.
Absolutely.
We're talking about cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
I want to talk about something.
Go ahead.
This white kid is getting paid, what they say, $60,000 a video to do these dances.
Which one? It's about the backpack kid?
No, the chubby.
Oh, that kid. Yeah.
I'm so torn about that right now, because he do be killing, bruh.
Low key, yeah.
But there's tons of black kids out there doing that. How come they ain't getting 60,000 a video? I'm not trying to make it about race, but that's
Right.
a conversation about.
It's a good conversation to bring up because I think the plain devil's advocate, they'll say, well, it's a kid that is that doesn't look like what hip hop culture traditionally looks like, so that's what makes it a bit of a, I don't even know if I want to take this word on because I've been butchering it, anomaly. Yeah, he's a unique thing, and that's what the culture of virality is built upon. Is it a little bit of familiarity with something that's completely out of place is what kind of is the DNA of something viral. So maybe that's their argument in that.
His race makes the video an anomaly. I'm just gonna state some facts. He can't control his race.
Sure.
He can't control what kind of dancing he likes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? He can't control being good at the dancing. He can't control how people react to him.
Right.
Yet, I know that he is copying something that's not native to his culture. And I don't know for a fact. I like to speak accurately. Sure. But what I can surmise in my life experience, he is imitating something that's not native to his culture, and he is allowed to profit greatly from it. Yeah. And I hope I said that accurately as to not hate on that young man, but just to point out that this is the conversation that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought it up because I think that for people who are not able to see it at this point, what we're talking about, when we talk about cultural appropriation, or we talk about these terms that you're hearing, or you don't see that, you don't see the danger in believing that somebody who stands for a movement like a Black Lives Matter movement is not saying that nobody else's lives matter. When I first heard about it, I was like, cool, that's pretty self-explanatory. Other people took it and said, oh, you're trying to say that my life doesn't matter and only your life matters? So no, now it's all lives matter. And what happens is that when you do that kind of mentality, and don't think that doesn't come to the producer community. I learned very well, very naively, that it does apply to our community as well. And that there's a lot of people who they're like, it doesn't matter, bro. It's all music. That's all that matters. And it's like, no, it does matter. And why does it matter? Because it matters to somebody. That's why it matters. Even if you don't understand it for yourself, it matters to somebody. So when you're hearing this, you got to understand the danger in belittling someone's individual or a group of people's individual struggle for the sake of all inclusiveness. Like that's a dangerous thing. Right. And I try to think of like all these different ideas of things that could kind of like go to an example that folks would understand. But I mean, that's an issue. That's an issue that I think that needs to be spoken about. I'm glad you brought that up because, yeah, get your money by any means. Like I have no right to tell somebody what to spend their money on. If they see a benefit in it and he's able to, by all means do that. But here's the thing about it that Ninth Wonder made the point, and this was something where it wasn't necessarily that I was kind of walking around it. I just wanted people to see their own biases be reflected in what they were saying. I never attacked lo-fi. I gave an opinion and nobody asked why I felt that way. It was immediately defensive. That's an issue. And MG the Future brought that up. He was like, why is your immediate thing not to ask, well, why do you feel that way? Why is it immediately, no, you can't say that. Why be so divisive? Why don't you ask me why do I feel that way? I'm a human being and I'm able to articulate myself. That would have been more of a productive conversation because perhaps you could have changed my mind in the midst of that. But
the part of our culture that includes the internet certainly seems to include an attribute that does not want to seek clarity and is quick to assume tone.
Yes.
When something is typed and not spoken.
Right. Right. Hey, that's couldn't have said it any better. Yeah. Oh man. Okay. Well, I mean, we didn't do a deep dive, but we definitely put our foot in that water cold, and it's amazing how the conversation sort of kind of slows down when we get to this area. But we got to have these uncomfortable conversations because I feel like if I'm going to have an audience like I do, if I have an audience like I do, we got to have a very honest conversation. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So. Hold on. Let me acknowledge AC Ducky. Curtis seems to talk more than the guest. It's like he asks a question, then uses a half response to continue his point of view for a long time. Well, I appreciate you dissecting that. Next question. So let's talk about let's talk about your work that you are doing with the school. I mean, it's when you described it to me, I was like, my mind was blown that this even exists anywhere in the U.S. Please talk about the work that you're doing with these young students and what it is that you're teaching them.
And so that ties into what we were just talking about, which is culture, right? And so my mentor, Adam J. Cruz, who's a professor of music education at the University of Illinois, he's the original person whose classes I took. He established in 2017 the inaugural. See, every university across the country, state-funded university, they have a band camp all summer. They have basketball camp. They have football camp. They have a band camp. Well, University of Illinois, in their band camp, they've been doing School of Rock for about 6 years when we started doing our ISYM hip-hop camp. So it started with that. I had some expertise as a teacher. I also was self-taught in these DAWs. And then, you know, like, listen, like, used to be a rapper. Like, I can rap, but not rap now. But everybody used to rap, right? So it's like the kids, they come at the beginning of the week. We teach them about the cultural philosophy of the camp, which is acceptance, which is being open-minded, where students are expressing things they may not even feel comfortable expressing at home. You know what I mean? Ideas about gender equality, ideas about orientation, ideas about social justice, ideas about gender, just different things where it's an exploratory, idealistic thing for you know, kids to like give themselves a voice, because that's the basics of hip hop culture. We don't know them with a lot of history, but we kind of let them know these are the roots. We get local artists, things to be involved. The kids have a week. They make a beat. They write a song, and then we have a big concert on Saturday. We perform for their parents. You know what I mean?
Man,
we're going into year 3 of doing that.
Wow.
In that work, what we're trying to do is, my mentor, Adam J. Cruz, has this prolific vision where he understands that, okay, here's a simple philosophy. We know that the music that we hear on the radio is not being made by instruments. Sometimes they are, but we know it's going into Pro Tools, it's going into some kind of DAW, right? And so you think about, there's this disconnect between when kids join band and go to choir and orchestra when they're in school. There's a disconnect between that and an actual career in music. Well, that disconnect lies in the DAWs. Well, where do you learn how to use the DAWs? Not in school, but on the internet. Well, the kids should learn how to use DAWs when they're in general music, and there should be to do that in school. But that starts with the educators, right? Well, who's going to teach the educators how to use DAWs? Well, there's a reason you don't have people who are, when they started recruiting me, they were looking for somebody to teach this class. They said, hey, we need somebody who has a PhD. And he's trying to tell them, you're not going to find it because you haven't made room for it. And all of this is a larger framework of equality and access and culture, right? As a middle school teacher, what I understood is there's very small percentage of Black kids taking band. A lot of it is tied to the fact that they can't afford the instruments and how they get to and from school, right? It's hard to lug a tuba, you know, if you got to get on 3 city buses, and you see what I'm saying?
I see it.
So
I see it.
all these greater issues that go into, well, okay, University of Illinois, if we want to build a program where you teach digital audio music production, we have to start small. So we had the camp, and then using my connections with iStandard and other people I know in the industry, we started doing workshops. Then they said, okay, we got a little budget, we're going to do some classes.
Right.
They asked me to teach this one class, which I developed. It's called The Art of Beat Making, where I had to jam beginners and advanced people into one class. I kid you not, Curtis, 1 hour before we got on this podcast, we were cleared to do 2 classes for next year. So I'm doing one.
Hey, congratulations.
And I need to remind the people that you are a guest lecturer by way of giving my students access to your fluid producer's course. Man. So that's
I wasn't gonna bring it up. I wasn't gonna bring it up. I wasn't gonna bring it up, but I appreciate it, man.
In the class, and so people definitely know who you are. We're gonna be getting you into video chat to talk to the students here pretty soon. You've already talked to some of my students. So here's the other piece we're doing. We're working with the Illinois Music Education Association, which is, you know, your high school, public schools. They have their band and choir competitions every year. Well, now we just had our first composition track where students did remixes and they submitted their own original stuff they made in DAWs. I judged the competition, and then at the state conference, they received the awards, and I also do a workshop.
Right.
Bro, when I promise you, I'm okay talking about this. Like, I've got some stuff in the works where I'm trying to bring a lot of what iStandard does with Beat Life University to them. Like, it's about education. It's about sharing everything with everybody and connecting all the dots.
Yeah, Please, man, everybody in the comments, please leave that clapping emoji. This man deserves 1 million of those, and plus more. And when you see him, he deserves that firm handshake and an eye to eye thank you, because that work is so important for it, to me initially, and I'm sure there's many other reasons why it's important. But two things stand out to me: the fact that you're affecting such young students. You are their bridge to the conversation we had earlier, to an appreciation of a culture, of a technique, of an approach. Not all of them will become professional musicians after this, but they will still be members of society who will become either judgmental of genres like hip hop, or they'll be defenders of a genre like that. But because of that, man, you are the bridge, and I couldn't think of a better bridge and a more articulate human being that could even give them that perspective. And even like what I love about it, bro, is that you give it in such an unbiased way. You're never pushing your issue or your agenda. It's like you give the person the opportunity. And maybe that's why I've been doing so much damn talking. What's the name? AC, is the fact that his approach. You could tell this man is interviewed a gazillion type of people, because if I feel like I'm getting interviewed just by the way he opens up the conversation. But that being said, that's important. And then also too, you're teaching the new generation something that we weren't necessarily given the opportunity to be taught except by mentors and individuals, right? Now it's a formal education in which you're even bridging the gap between young producers and their parents. Please speak on that. Have you seen a difference in the way that the parents perceive their young music makers within their household, being that it's in the environment of a school?
So, bro, like parents, and so I forgot about this. My work here in Atlanta, really quickly, the 411 Brand Foundation. We do some stuff during the year, but our big thing during the summer, also I do here, which I have to miss a week of, headed to Illinois, was we go to Patchwork for 2 hours every Saturday. Right. We had let's see, Amon Jackson talk to those kids. We had Ludacris's manager talk to those kids. Wow. Nick Grant, 2 summers in a row, helped them craft songs. We had D Sims, Young Thugs engineer, come in there and work with them. We had the engineer from The Game. I got a chance to work with these kids, and so I say that to say, I'm trying to remember why I was making that point.
We're talking about parents. Yeah. There we go.
So part of why I'm valuable to University of Illinois is being down here in Atlanta, right? And so I get around to all these studios. I've gotten around to all the universities that do audio and digital music production. And so now, between that camp and the camp up in Illinois, I do get calls from parents. Hey, what schools should we be looking at? How much should we be looking to pay? I get calls from parents. What kind of computer should I buy my child since they want to get started working with these dolls? What's a good entry point? That kind of stuff. Right. Like, they got a chance. Like, they can really go, okay, how about this? Tennessee State, I just got off the phone today with their coordinator of commercial music, because one of our students from the camp is a freshman there and was talking up front. And now this guy's asking me, how can I get interns down to the studios in Atlanta? How can High Standard bring Beat Life University to Tennessee State? So, like, just being a doctor and existing in that space is like, yes, parents, it's legitimate. Like, yo, there's a career here. How about this? I got a kid in a small town called Muhammad, Illinois, who has already started selling beats and dropping mixtapes. But meanwhile, the kid is also doing the high school musical, and, you know, he's a formerly trained, like, opera singer. You know what I'm saying? Like, wow. I love breaking down these walls and just making what we do more and more legitimate.
Man, well, I congratulations to all that, man. My mind is blown right now. I'm just looking at, like, this is stuff that we didn't even have a chance to discuss before we jumped on here, but you're doing, man, you're doing some much needed and much necessary work that you know, I'm sure, man, it carries the mantra that Nipsey stood for, of the marathon continues, right? And that we all kind of have our own marathon and our own goal of pushing whatever industry or culture that we are part of, man. But what you're doing right now, bro, like, I'm looking at that and I'm like, I can't imagine. You know, I'm proud of where I'm at, and I'm so thankful for the life and the career and where I'm at. But I cannot imagine where my career would have been had I been 19 and came across somebody like you.
Thank you, man.
Doing what you do. I can't even imagine it. So for those that are in those areas that we spoke about, man, like, please, you know, where can they get information about this, or is this only something that is specifically for if you're somebody in the university?
Right. So what we're trying to do is expand it and kind of open it up. I was able to offer it to a couple of people who were not university students, but that's like everything's up in the air. But what I'm going to talk to them about this summer is seeing how we can open it up to people who are not enrolled in university. There's a certain process you have to go through. To be honest, only 2 people were willing to go through the process. You have to basically, if you want to take a single class, if you want to take a single class at USC, you could just do it without being enrolled, but you got to go through a process. You know what I'm saying? So trying to figure out how we can give other people access. But other than that, man, anything you want to hit me up, man, I'm living on Instagram. I'm in the process of revamping my website. I'm really exploring my options as to how I'm going to host my platforms. But for right now, I do everything through Instagram. You click on the link to my link tree. You can get to all my beats. You can get to all my kits and everything, man. But University of Illinois, if you go to illinois.edu/music, you should be able to see more about what we do with ISYM and the class.
Man, super dope. And shout out to the chat, because I see you guys. It's interesting what happens in the chat sometimes. Sometimes it's folks that are actually engaging with the conversation. And then, because, sometimes people come in there with questions and they answer one another. And I think that's, sometimes I get kind of bothered by it, because I'm like, it's very distracting to those who are trying to understand, who are reading the chat, but they're trying to follow the video. But I understand it, because what's great about it, the bigger picture, the snow globe view, is the fact that the stuff that we are doing, you and I both, and so many others out here, is the fact that it's creating people who are more independent and less dependent, right? There shouldn't be a need for me to make videos for the next 50 years. There should be more of you every year that are starting to do your own version of what it is that we have already set in front of you, right? The example we set. I want the next person to take it further than I could ever even think to take it, right? That's why the folks that I do embrace, like the homie that was in here right now, Nashawn, I talked to him earlier today. I'm like, yo, bro, like we gonna work soon, because I think it's important that when you see that vision in people, and you see it, I'm sure, on a regular basis when you're in these classrooms, it is our responsibility to make sure that we create the next generation of this thinking, the next generation, not just of our agenda, but the bigger picture. I think that's the way. If any of you want to honor a Nipsey, or honor somebody who was before him, this is the way you do it, is that you create more. You create more of those thinkers. You create more independent people and independent thinkers. And we're going to be all right, So thank you for your time today, man. I do want to make sure, I think we already kind of covered some of the website and stuff, but you got the link tree within the Instagram. Once again, that Instagram is
at TheLetterLBeats, TheLetterL Beats.
Okay, and of course, when I go and put the metadata later on for this interview, when I re-upload it, I'll have that information in there. But do you guys have any questions? Because this man is a very busy man, but I want to make sure that we answer at least 3 of your questions before we exit out of here. I got you, Nashawn. No worries. Any questions in particular? I think somebody asked a question early, and I'm going to look for that as you guys are starting to fill in, because I know there's a little bit of a delay. Let's keep on looking. Where is it at? No, let me just wait for if there are no questions, what is some advice that you have for young producers on the internet that are trying to advance their way, for somebody who's talked to so many producers that are in the industry, so many wide-ranging producers? A lot of folks are just saying thank you for sharing, which is dope. But what is advice that you have for producers here who want to get to that next level? What have you seen from your unique perspective that you feel like is advice that can help them?
Speaking specifically about the internet, you just got to get your branding game up. I would say take cues from people who are setting good models. Don't do exactly what they do, but adapt your model, adapt some things they do to what you do. One of the reasons I was able to grow, or I began to grow my brand the way that I did, was because I met DJ Payne 1 at A3C in 2017. He was like, listen, man, if people know who you are, you can sell anything. You see what I'm saying? And so that's what precipitated a lot of my moves after that, was just growing my brand. right? Ways you can grow your brand specifically. I would Cymatics, they're killing right now. They're doing the giveaways. They're partnering with other producers in the space. I can tell they're investing money in their advertisement, and they're doing these contests. And you could just tell they're investing. It's not just like hey, we just started to give this away. They clearly at the start of the year had a budget about this is how we're gonna grow.
And we're gonna go full court press on that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not trying to like free advertise for them, but that's just people I see in the space where, oh, I got some ideas that I would try from my perspective based on what they're doing. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Homie Mon Dillinger, he's doing some great stuff with his content, his dailies, and his selfies. Curtis King does great work with his graphics. I have you provide value, right? After a while, I'm going to be looking like, hey, I want to learn how to do this in FL. I just want to try this technique. I can only go so far where I'm going to bump into a Curtis King video. And there's a reason that I need to listen to you and hear what you have to say.
Right.
I think the last thing you were talking about drums knocking. I was trying to figure out how I can take that understanding in FL and apply it to Reason. You know what I'm saying? So providing value, having a strong brand, having a reason for people to get eyes on your brand, whether it's a daily tip or something like that, and do it your way. Don't just copy the next thing.
Okay, and I'm gonna take this last question, and because I know it's probably a lengthy interview, but I want people to revisit this, and I'm gonna actually take these interviews that I've been doing as of late, because I still have some more that I want to bring on here. Shout out to Servita Music. I want to talk to Lifestyle Did It. And a few other names that I already have in mind that I want to bring on here. I want to give you guys so many different perspectives, but I want to make sure that, you guys have a balanced approach to it so that you realize there's a lot of common themes of the stuff that I've been talking about that we're all seeing the same thing, right? And the last question that I think really ties in the work that you're doing with the schools is a question from Jay Temple. He said, what is the best way to become a music educator?
Volunteer.
Okay, what does that look like?
For me, so when I took the class that first summer, they were like, hey, we're going to the detention center, and we got a stack of iPads, and we got FL Studio on the iPads, and we're going to show the kids how to make beats on the iPads, and they're going to write rhymes. But one of the reasons they were willing to hire me is because I volunteered to go to the juvenile detention center. Volunteered. And that showed them my work ethic, and it showed them that I had an expertise without them having to pay me to see it. Right. And then I think I did a couple workshops. One thing that helped was everywhere I was, like, I pitched to do panels at A3C 2 years in a row, which is important. And I didn't get them, but the people at A3C and the board, they take me seriously. So if I can put together another good panel, that makes me an expert in the field. And I know who to get in that panel, kind of thing. So, like, and nobody said go do that. These are just things I figured out. I would say 1, volunteer. I would say 2, get in education spaces. Go find out, like, one thing that's really prevalent right now. I won't take up too much more time. A lot of universities are just now, like, I keep an eye out on the job boards for what we call adjunct professors of digital music, right? Emory is looking for somebody who does what I do, but they're looking for a PhD. Henny the business at Morehouse already does that and more. And I can't imagine what their program is with his experience.
Man, that's gotta be crazy. Yeah.
Ninth's been doing it in North Carolina A&T for the longest. He's also the Harvard fellow. I think he did a class at Duke as well. Get in spaces and find out what people's digital music programs look like, right? And find out, like, where does your expertise match up with what they have? You might pull up on a school and they got a couple computers, and some people know how to use them on their own, but they don't even have a class teaching it, right? You might pull up on a school and they have somebody teaching it, but they're not as well versed in it. You could take the class and see what they're all about. Like, Adam knows how to use every DAW, but Adam looks at me like I'm crazy when I start playing my beats. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Adam looked at me and said, well, I know I have a PhD in music education. He got 50 instruments on the wall, but he can clearly see I know what I'm doing when I get inside of the DAW.
Right.
So get inside these spaces where you want to be, get inside these communities and, like, explore them.
Leave the house. You got to leave the house to do that, though. And that's something I always tell producers. I was like, you got to leave the house if you want. If you think that you're going to become a young gazillionaire with tons of plaques on the wall, with all these credits, by emailing beats on a regular basis. I know you got to start somewhere, but eventually you're going to have to leave the house if that's your goal, right? So, you know, and for somebody like myself, that even though I spent the greater part of my 15-year career being out there in the streets and going into the studios and shaking hands and being in front of faces on a regular basis with my flat top, like, I had to do it. Jay Temple says, thank you, by the way. I had to do it. I had to show face. And if I didn't show face, there would not be the opportunity now that I have in this space to be at home and shoot videos, to do an interview on a Thursday morning, you know, with my buddy from Atlanta. Like this to me, like, this is so ideal, but it wouldn't have happened had I not got my butt out there and my feet to pavement and talk. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it doesn't stop. Like, I'm sure you have more travel opportunities coming up, and there is a cycle of travel in your year. Sure.
Well, I think that the way that I travel is a bit differently now, though, too. To be completely transparent, like, there's still a necessity to leave. And honestly, like, I'll give you an example. Last week, I had an opportunity to get interviewed by huge YouTube news company called Cheddar. And they basically had me drive out to L.A. And for those that don't know, from where I'm at in San Diego, like, L.A. is not close. It's like almost a 2-hour drive. And so I drove out there, 2-hour drive in traffic, just for a 10-minute interview, just because I knew how important it was to have somebody like me be a voice, because I don't know who they're going to bring on behalf of beat leasing producers to talk about the industry. It could be somebody who's like, yeah, I'm trying to get out of that. So, you know, somehow, like, it used to be popping, like, it's dead. I wouldn't want that to happen. So I know how important my voice is. So I drove 2 hours to get there. Then it took 4 hours to get back home, because I was in the middle of rush hour traffic, and it was like a 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock interview. But you got to be very strategic about where you're going. I don't have to now at 34 do the same, you know, sort of sweat and grit that I did studio to studio. Now it's based upon the relationships that I built the first 13 years by shaking hands and showing my work ethic. People know they can mail in work and I'm gonna get it done. Same thing like with this Levi's and this Justin Timberlake thing. I didn't have to meet with anybody. That was done off from here.
Talk more about that.
Yeah, I was gonna avoid it, only because, you know, like I said, I didn't want to make it about wifey just hit me up. I didn't want to make it about you know, that, because I feel like I probably will dedicate a video to showing how Splice is the reason why, like, that placement came through, because of the convenience that the Splice app is. And I know I'm an affiliate, but that's not what I'm getting at, is that that opportunity. I had a you know, my mentor, my big brother Murs, hit me up, and, you know, initially he asked me, and I was going to say no, because my mentality is not placement. I'm not looking for placement. I'm looking to build up this online brand. I'm looking to own what I have, own my space, basically make sure that I establish myself as a voice of authority, and just continue to pow down content, because the more that I do it, every other aspect, every other stream of income rises up. My courses, my drum kits, because people are like, if he gives me this kind of information for free, I cannot imagine what he has. Like, I have the new course with BusyWorks Beats. If you go to his website, the Drum Magic, somebody just mentioned it earlier, musician friend. That stuff is all important, but it requires me to be at home. But this particular situation, in the same way that I have, like, right now I have my laptop. I know folks can't see it, but I have my laptop that I'm looking at you with right now. I have my laptop set up, and basically the commercial was on loop. It was like a rough draft of it. It was on loop, and I was using FL Studio's video player, and I literally was making my beats and looking at it and trying to see, okay, what instrument best represents this? Strings? Okay, put the strings in it. All right, put the drum loop together to make sure it's in the same tempo. Cool, it's all matched up. Then I would export a video, send it to them, and they're like, we really like this. Could you add this? And it was just back and forth, really just emailing and getting on the phone with some of the people who were like, you know, we like this, but we feel like it should be this. And then, yeah, that was that. But initially I was going to say no to it, because my mentality was this business, but then they told me how much it was for. And I was like, not that I can be like, I can't be pimped by no money. If I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. But I was like, man, you know what? Maybe I should take a stab at it. My son's birthday was coming up. You know what I'm talking about? Like I wasn't hurting at all. I wasn't hurting, but I was like, that'd be kind of nice, right? Because you're dealing with corporations, it's gonna be something different. You're dealing with Levi's, so I took a stab at it. And in the back of my mind, I was like, like, not that I didn't want it, but it was kind of that energy, like, you know, let it be, let it be. But then I seen that, and then I was like, the first drafts I sent them, they were like, oh, yeah, you're our guy. Let's go. I'm like, oh. So then I just got to work. I got to work, and I put it together. It took probably about 12 to 15 drafts. And then
I was about to say, one thing I've learned about it, they're gonna say you're our guy. Now change this. Now change this.
Yeah. That means they own you for that period of time. Like they own your. I shouldn't say own you. That's a bad word. They own your time, because when they called me 6 in the morning, because, you know, it's a difference in time, 6 in the morning, and they need, you know, a different break or a different snare placement. Guess who got their mark self up and went right in the studio out the bed and started to get to work? Because it's like they are paying for your time, and they didn't abuse it. Thank God. Because I know some companies that will abuse it who don't understand the process, but they didn't abuse it. And I went to work, and I knew how important this was. And then when I saw the vision come together, I was like, see, I'm glad for those opportunities, because every draft makes me a better producer if I want to look at it like that. A lot of producers get annoyed by it, right? And they'll be like, oh, I want to just give me the money already. I was looking at it like I'm literally becoming a better video editor. I'm becoming a better scorer of music score of music for commercial and ads, and it's gonna only improve my craft as well. So that's like sort of my long short story about that.
Congratulations, fam.
Thank you, bro. Thank you, man. Thank you. I'm just glad that, you know, that CTC, they cut the check, and you know, Justin liked the tweet, and so my Twitter been kind of crazy, but it's bittersweet, and I can't really fully enjoy it, because once again my thoughts go back to Nipsey and the family of, because I literally had the biggest placement in my career the day after. So it's like I haven't really fully sat down to breathe it in, but thankful for the opportunity, man. And, you know, I appreciate you allowing me to talk about that in our time and space, and I appreciate your time and answering these questions, man. You are so important to the community at large. No matter what anybody's particular background is, you need to somehow know or get to know or go follow TheLetterLBeats, TheLetterLBeats on Instagram or whatever you prefer, whichever social media drug you prefer. Go follow him and let it be known. But thank you for your time, man. Was there anything else that you want to add before we close here?
Thank you, man. I appreciate you, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Oh, you know it. You already know it, man. So thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody that's been sitting in the chat. Once again, this is Curtis King at CurtisKingBeats.com. Peace out.